episodes, session in our College 411 series. My name is Dr. Jose Saldivar. I am the owner of Creo College Readiness Educational Opportunity Consultants, and I'd like to welcome everybody to our webinar today. I have two panelists with us, and I'm really excited about these panelists because they do amazing work. This is something that I know is near and dear to their heart. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to let them introduce themselves. So Aimee, why don't you get started?
Sure. Good evening. My name is Aimee Nunez. I have been in college counseling for a little while now. I currently work at Lamar Academy with McAllen ISD, and I
Yeah.
serve as a college counselor in the building for all students 9 through 12. And I'm very excited to be a part of this and just work with the community, answer any questions we have about what college app season is all about.
Awesome. Thank you. Thomas, how about you?
Yes, thanks so much for putting this together, Jose. My name's Thomas Garcia. I'm the founder and executive director of CSLAP, a 501c3 nonprofit. Our title is College Scholarship Leadership Access Program, and every word in that title matters for the work we do. Access brings everything together. 10 years ago, when I was a college freshman at Princeton University, I was the first in my family to go to college, and I think a lot of luck went into my being there. If I had missed an application, if I didn't have certain information ahead of time, I wouldn't have been there. And I was self-aware of that when I was receiving a lot of calls and texts from my friends in the class of 2013 at PSJ North going through the same issues. So when I was a college freshman, I came back to PSJ ISD and I talked to our then superintendent, Dr. King, about founding a college summer institute that enables students like me to come and ask the questions, what is it like to go to college? And not to hear it from a teacher, a counselor, or a college admissions rep, but from someone who was once in their shoes, a near peer mentor. For the past 10 years, CSLAP has developed from a summer institute to a high school course I taught at PSJ to now an independent nonprofit. And we primarily teach college access classes, whether that's during the school day at local schools, after school, where students can come to us from all across Hidalgo County. And in many cases, we export all the way out to Brownsville as well at local nonprofit partners and housing authorities. We also have free summer programming. Behind me, you see a lot of photos and images from those golden days where we were 19, 20, 21 years old with that spirit of wanting to give back. We also host one-on-one college coaching sessions, and I'm happy to see some familiar names in the Zoom room here from some of our families. And thank you all for coming in. And I'm here to add anything I can to Aimee's wide-ranging expertise. That's what CSLAP is meant to do, is to increase capacity at local school districts and simply fill in the gaps.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much to both of you. I didn't get to share a little bit about my background. So as I said, I'm the owner of Creo Consultants. Spent 20 years in higher ed, and technically 22 because I still teach part-time. But I used to oversee the first year experience program at UTRGV. And so worked closely with a lot of our first year students that came through the university and continue to do so. And like my panelists, just committed to helping students access college, but then also answer questions. And so I think the other thing that I'd like to impress upon our audience is that there are a lot of resources here. And so for us, this is an opportunity for us to get these resources out there, to share the knowledge, and just as Thomas said, right, help increase capacity. And we want to help our partners, help school districts, and help families out. So before we get started, let's set some ground rules. If you have any questions, please go ahead and drop those into the chat. I'll go ahead and I'll be monitoring the chat, and I'll get those to our panelists here. But before we get started, are there any sort of initial questions from our guests? No? Okay. Well then, so I think I'm going to turn it over to our panelists, and I'm going to say maybe we can start with maybe some of the most frequently asked questions that you all get from local high school seniors.
Yes, yeah, go ahead, Thomas, and then
yes.
Well, I'll add on.
Thanks, Aimee. I was just about to share something I heard earlier from a student. They were asking me, why is it that Apply Texas only gives us 70 characters to describe all the activities we're in? And it's like we work so hard throughout our high school career to do so many service hours. How do we describe that in 10 to 12 words?
Mhm.
And I describe it as small puzzle pieces. Many of our families have heard me say this, where the activities list is an opportunity to say something about you in a very small amount of space. Each of those activities gives you a small opportunity to convey a certain skill or a certain quality about yourself. And I consider it a warm up leading to the 650 word essay, where I consider that the big puzzle piece. So I often get the question, what is the utility of these activities? Is it really worth our time to spend so much time in there? I actually think it's the second most important part of the application process. Part of what we try to do is get across involvement in all these different ways. If a student feels like there's a story to be told in one of their activities, but they can't say it in 70 characters, that's usually a green flag for something to write about in your main essay or one of the many supplemental essays. So just wanted to bring that up today about why is there 70 characters and what's the purpose? I do wish there was more. I feel like they can easily increase it to 200 at least. But with 70, I think on our end, with families and students in the chat, I think it gives us an opportunity to warm up. And so if you're still working on the application process, I recommend beginning there. Chronologically, that's what you have to go through first on Apply Texas on the Common App before you actually get to the essay. Consider it a warm up and consider it pointing you in the right direction of what you should be writing about in the end.
Great advice.
Yes,
Great advice. Aimee, do you
that
want to
does
add
that
anything?
yeah, that's a frustration every year. Unfortunately, we have, we will work with students who, like Thomas mentions or mentioned, spend a lot of time in their extracurriculars and are very devoted, they're very dedicated, and they're very consistent. And they want the opportunity to say those things and share those things in their application. There are some opportunities to do this. Just doing a little research, for example, UT will not mind reviewing an actual resume. If anything, they like, I've been, their last presentation I listened to was like, send it over, we want to read all the details. So there are, I'm going to say a few, I'm not going to lie and say everyone, right? But if you do your research and you ask, you may have the opportunity to submit the actual like PDF of your resume. That's not always the case, as Thomas mentioned, like at that point, then you might have to be selective, and then share what you feel is most relevant or chronological. It's going to depend on how you wish to share that information. And sometimes you'll want to talk to a counselor. It could be your counselor at school, someone like myself who works with college apps, someone like Thomas who could be helping you out outside of school as well. Where we could also just help you navigate that to decide, like, what should I include if I'm involved in a whole lot and there's not enough room. Sometimes that conversation is really crucial when you're very busy and you kind of do everything and we can't fit it all, right? So sometimes it's going to be chronological, sometimes it's going to be relevance. What are the things you're doing that are very much geared towards your, the programs you're applying into, or some career goals that you've already identified and are pretty set on. So that's an important conversation, and it's definitely something to bring up when you're sitting down with your counselor.
Thank you. And just to, I think to jump on and to add to, I think already some great advice is one thing that really stood out to me, Aimee, is you said, do your research. And so I think encouraging students to sort of look beyond just the Apply Texas, right, or the Common App and the website, and okay, this is what's being asked of me, but where am I applying? And then what other information might be relevant, right? Will they take a resume? Will they review my resume? And so encouraging our students to spend a little bit of extra time and putting in some research to, visit the school's websites, right? So thank you for that. I appreciate that. We still don't have any questions in the chat. So it's kind of a free for all for us.
Okay.
But Thomas, let me see, you've been doing this work for some time. You did some of your, you spend a lot of time in the summers working with students. What are some other, frequently asked questions that you get from students or maybe families?
I often get asked about why choose this university over another, and that's already looking at the other side of things. But here at CSLAP, we actually take that into account when we're applying to college. So one concrete example is reviewing course offerings. Sometimes students come to the college application process with a preconception of why a certain university is their top university, or there are some assumptions that this school will be the best fit for me because it's renowned for this kind of major or academic department. What we do at CSLAP is twofold. We look at the course offerings. We pretend we're a current college student about to enroll in classes, and we ask some critical questions. Can I imagine myself taking this course? What does biology look like at UT versus A&M College Station? I was an English major, and when I sat down in front of my advisor, I had no clue what I was jumping into. I just knew I wanted to major in English. I didn't know at Princeton there was an American literature tilt because the professors there happened to do research in that field. I probably would have majored in something else if they were Shakespeareans. So thankfully I chose correctly, but it was a complete coincidence. But we don't want students to be in that situation. So what we often do is prepare them ahead of time so they have a much clearer sense of why they're applying somewhere, why it's a good fit. And the second part of that is it helps them with their supplemental essays. So when UT Austin asks you, why is this your first choice major? Students are talking about professors, they're talking about specific elements of courses they want to take. It shows that they did the research, but also that they are indeed a good fit. So they're not just saying UT is number one in blank, 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 or I've always wanted to go there. You guys are amazing at this. They can actually show why they're a good fit. And we've seen that both helps them increase their chances of admission, as well as intrinsically make sure that they know what they're jumping into.
Yeah, this is a really popular question as well, right? The spring rolls around and we have decisions rolling in, and then families start making these sometimes difficult choices. And so one thing I enjoy doing with my students, and I feel is a really crucial step in the spring of junior year, hopefully that this is something more juniors have the opportunity to do, is when we're doing our college research, we do talk about terminology like college fit. And so we talk about what does that mean and what are the fits, right? So we talk about location, we talk about campus size, we talk about what like ratio would you rather, sit in, faculty to student ratio. And we talk about the name. I think that's really important. A really important discussion topic, especially living in the area, right, where we have a lot of first gen students. And maybe families only know the names, right? And because these universities do a great job of pushing their name out there, and they're just so popular by name. So we do talk about like, what do we look at? How do we dive deeper beyond the name? And that's part of that searching for your fit. So just because it's a tier 1 institution, top research institution, because it's Ivy doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be the best fit for you at the end of the day. And sometimes it is. So it definitely depends on what fit are you looking for, small school, big school, program specific. Do you need it to have Greek life? Does it, what are those things that need to line up? And then in the spring, you take all those things that were really important to you when you were applying, and you think through those things with the decisions that came out, right? So I got into schools A, B, and C, and these are the things I thought I wanted. And are they still lining up? Do they still matter that much? And it's a great family discussion. So I really do believe, I'm thankful for any parents that do listen to this or pop in, because it's a really important piece of the conversation. If you can have a parent willing to do the research with you and be involved. But if not, you look for the adults like us who love this work and are ready to help you out and ready to talk to your parents and answer their questions as well. But yeah, college fit is huge. It is important, right? So I also say to my kids, we don't put all our eggs in one basket. So I might, you might have a senior very excited to apply to like 5 or 6 different top tier institutions. And then you're asking them, but where else? What else are we looking at here, right? We don't want to put all our eggs in that one basket. So college fit is a huge discussion. Hopefully it's happening in the spring of junior year, but it definitely should be happening early in the fall of senior year.
Well, thank you to both of you. Yeah, and I would throw one other. We talked about geography. Yeah, I chose my school based on weather. So I please do not just do that, because I did not look at my financial aid package, although it was very good. But I was like, okay, I can't deal with cold. Where's the weather nice and warm? And so that's how I made my choice. But I appreciate all of this information, right? And definitely for our parents out there, hopefully they've engaged in this conversation with their kids and thinking about right? You know, also, what are they comfortable with, right, as a family? And
Mhm.
so engaging in these conversations early, but then most definitely
Yes.
for our seniors, right, and their families, absolutely the necessity, the need to engage in this conversation now as they're getting ready to apply and thinking, looking ahead. Okay, so we've talked about College Fit, we've talked about the activities section in the Apply Texas application, Apply Texas website. What are some other common questions that you all get from some of the students that you serve? Oh, wait, we've got a question. So from Lucas in our audience, he says, is it fine if I apply to UTRGV with a different personal statement than one I would use for another university, such as A&M? Either of you care to?
Yeah. Um, sure. I'll start and then Thomas jump in. I don't mind this at all, honestly. So personally, I encourage my students to apply to UTRGV early. And then they shift focus to their Common App applications, since we do know that UTRGV is not yet on the Common App. So my students, for the most part that I work with, will focus their energy first on in the spring of junior year on the personal statement they're drafting for UTRGV. And once we get that worked on, which would be like now, right at this point, I'm already like, let's go. We need to shift. So they're hopefully submitting to UTRGV already, and then editing that personal statement to use on Common App for schools like A&M, UT, and so on. So this is not cheating. This is not bad. We're taking advantage of the way it's been set up for us, really. And so if you can submit to UTRGV right away, what we're hoping for is a decision, an admit, so that you can also submit to their scholarship application where you have to be an admitted student in order to actually jump into that. So I see nothing wrong with that, actually, Lucas. I think that's a pretty good idea, especially if you already have something drafted that you feel is strong, and hopefully you've been able to run by an English teacher or a college counselor or your academic counselor, whoever's guiding you in the process.
Yes, I agree. It's totally fine to write one essay for UTRGV, another one for TAMU. And the way I would suggest approaching it is think about, what do you have a chance to say to TAMU that you don't have a chance to say to UTRGV? At A&M College Station, there's the main essay, Apply Texas Essay A, and then you're asked two supplemental questions at the end. So some students think that supplements just mean more work, but I think of them as opportunities. They give you another chance to say another dimension about yourself. You don't get quite as many opportunities for UTRGV, only because there's no additional supplemental questions. So if you can tailor the UTRGV essay to UTRGV and then write it in very different one for A&M, keeping in mind you have two shorter essays for A&M to write, I think that could be a good strategy for you.
Awesome. Thank you to both of you. Any other questions from our audience? Okay. Moving along then, from either one of you, what are some other common questions or issues, things that pop up when you're working with students?
Since we're talking about the essay, one aspect is, how do we approach the essay? First of all, some students come to us with the question, I wrote something, is it good enough? Or is this topic original enough? And what we try to do is reframe what the purpose of the college admissions essay is. We try to take away the idea that you're trying to be original or you're trying to stand out through an amazing achievement that no one else has done. The way we approach it is write about moments that matter. So moments that say something about you. If your transcript doesn't get across your empathy, your compassion, some soft skills, and your activities list maybe hints at it because you have a very short character count, maybe you can write about that in your essay. Think also about fit. If you know that you want to go into a certain major at UT, are you showing in your activities list and in the essay and in the supplements, do I have the skills and qualities necessary for someone into this major? And that'll also increase your chances of getting into that specific major if it's competitive. So those are the things that matter most. We start with moments that matter, and then we talk about, okay, these things happen. Why did they happen? These are where the qualities and traits come in. And then we work with students to transform moments into scenes where me as an admissions officer was not there at the moment this story happened. How can you draw me in? How can you make it memorable? So I'm not just reading another family essay, but it's actually an essay about something within the family unit that says something about you. Well, I also share with students who are advanced in the process, subvert expectations. If the admissions officer in the first couple of sentences thinks the essay is going to go one way because it's another family essay, but it goes a completely different way by the end of it, that can be a pleasant surprise to people who read thousands of these essays every single cycle. The example I gave to some of our students here in the chat is the essay in which the student starts with her grandmother's hands. The hands look one way at the beginning of the essay. They're very decrepit, they're old. That says something about the student. By the end of the essay, the hands are the same, but now the student says they're full of compassion and strength. So we're not writing about the grandmother. It's the student's perception of the grandmother, how the student changed from beginning to end. So a reoccurring image can help out in that way as well. So the reader can say, that's not the grandma essay, that's the essay about the hands. And those are some basic advice that I like to give to students here in the chat, especially since we're working on the essay right now. If you have any other questions in particular, please put them in the chat, especially when it comes down to, I want to say this about myself, but how do I convey this? Is there a certain symbol I can put in? Is there a way I can phrase this sentence? Although this happened to me, this moment's important, how can I frame it in a way that says something meaningful about me? That's where you can reach out to us and we'll help.
Yeah, I take a very similar approach working with students. We definitely talk about values and character traits that they feel are very important in themselves, that they feel are strengths, and that they know that they can contribute to the community on a college campus. So we do talk about those. What do you think those are? What are your strengths? And then we kind of work on it a little backwards, and then think on what are some stories, like what are some events in your life that highlight these things, and then we start building a draft from there. So you definitely do want to highlight some of those strengths, probably narrowing it into one or two where that narrative can highlight those. And you're sharing something beyond the transcript. So I like to use that with the students, or share it in that way where I tell them, like, what are you saying beyond the paper that they're already going to download off a Common App? What are you saying about yourself? And this is your shot, right? This is where you get to, it's about me. Like, this essay should be a me essay. And just like Thomas pointed out, even if you have another person like Grandma Tan, the essay should still remain, like, the focus has remained on you and not this other person who's probably amazing. And that's why you include them in your essay, but they're not trying to get into college, right? Like you are. So the essay should always be highlighting the writer, right? The student, for sure. So we do very similar strategy just to get that same end result where the student is highlighted and a value or a character trait is shining through the words on the paper.
Awesome. Thank you. I think that's great advice. I share similar advice whenever I work with students on essays. And, Aimee, to your point, the students want to write about somebody in their family, somebody who's had an impact, and often remind students, remember, it's great that you mention them, right? But they shouldn't be the focus. They're not the one that they're not going to get admitted. You're trying to get admitted. So,
yeah.
Keep the focus on yourself. And so, I appreciate both of your perspectives. One thing that I wanted to ask you, because I hear this a lot, and I've seen even particularly with changes because of affirmative action and things like that. And I came across an article, and I don't know if it was in the Atlantic or something, but it talked about like telling a sob story, that students are convinced that my essay has to, be a sob story, and they've got to feel sorry for me. Do you ever get any students that come and feel like sort of that's what they're shooting for, and kind of, do you encourage that? Do you kind of walk them back? Or, Thomas, I'll ask you, do you ask them to maybe reframe and let's look at those particular moments that you want to highlight, and not this one particular, like, I'm not trying to make people cry, right? But how do you all handle that?
Right. Recently, I've started learning how to teach students to unlearn things that they get on the internet, and very gently letting them know that there might be a famous influencer on Instagram or TikTok that says, don't write about these topics. And since the video has a lot of likes and views, they must be an authority on the topic. So sometimes those conceptions come in. And the idea that they have to write about something that is a sob story is one of the many narratives that sometimes we have to teach students to unlearn. The way I frame it to the students is on Apply Texas Essay A, if you write about an opportunity, there's only so many character arcs your character in the story can go through. The same thing with the challenge essay. Usually you show the challenge, how you overcame it, then there's denouement, and no matter what you write about, it's going to follow somewhat of a similar structure. But when you can take those structures that are somewhat rigid, you can think of them as frameworks and say, okay, if I'm going to write about a challenge, what are the different approaches I can take to the challenge? It doesn't have to be a sob story. It also doesn't have to write about a very specific type of subject. Instead of thinking about the audience and the kind of impact you're going to leave on them, we try to have students think within. These are the qualities and traits I want to say about myself. Does it make sense to write about them through an opportunity lens or a challenge lens? And then we ask them about the genre of the essay. Is this a leadership essay? So you're writing about your time in sports. Is this about sports really? Or is it really about the time that you pumped your team up and show that you were a leader in a time of challenge? So there's many different ways that we try to reframe what an essay could be. And one of the ways is get away from the idea that you can't write about XYZ or it must be XYZ. Look within and say, these are the topics that I'm interested in. There's a reason I'm interested in. Now we just have to attach those qualities and traits to them and then make a choice about which one makes the most sense for the Apply Texas Essay A that gets sent everywhere, and then which ones would be better for a supplement tailored to a very specific university.
Awesome.
So yeah, I agree with Thomas where there are a lot of ideas that float around. And so our students who, especially those that are very proactive and start looking into these things, do come with these ideas and these questions, is this true, right? So is it true that my story has to be about a challenge and then it has to be really sad? And so that's a big false. Like it can be if that's the story that you need to share about yourself, but it doesn't have to be. This can be a happy story throughout, and you're still sharing something very valuable about your character or something that you value or place a lot of value in your life. I've had students who wonder, like, my essay has nothing to do with academics. Is that okay? Yes, that's okay. Right? It's okay. Students will write a narrative about something that happened at school, and then it will naturally have this academic feel or tone or whatnot to it, and some students don't. So like Thomas mentioned, what is that thing about you that we need to make sure gets put out, and then we focus in on how are we going to write this, how are you going to draft this idea out. I don't necessarily tell my students don't write about these things, but I do give little warnings about, like, these are the things that people tend to write about, and so if you are going to write about them, they do have to say something very strong about you. Right, because an admissions recruiter will probably read a whole bunch of essays about sports. So what is your sports story going to say that's different from all the others, right? So that's definitely something to also consider, like, what are those popular topics and how is mine going to be different?
I love that. I love that. Yeah, those are great points. Great points all around. One thing I would like to add, I often remind students that, there some schools, right? Some of your top tier institutions will have an alumni interview component, right? But for a lot of schools that doesn't exist. And so oftentimes your essay can kind of serve as an interview, right? And so this is, what is it that you want the university to learn about you through this essay? What is it it's going to say about you? I think that's in keeping with what both of you have already said. So thank you. The essay is a big component, right? It's a big part of the college application. Is there anything else, any other advice you want to offer to our viewers out there regarding the essay?
Yes, I often share the story to students that when I was a senior in high school, a university came to present to us, and everyone in the room happened to be part of the top 10%. because we were top 10%, we would get automatically admitted to the university. So the recruiter claimed, everyone in this room, if you all just put a sentence or two in the essay, your guys are going to get in. Just submit it on time, make sure it's correct. And some students did do that, and some students did get accepted. But they, of course, were not eligible for the merit scholarships. They couldn't really do much else with that essay. And in the end, they didn't really do their due diligence to see, is this really a good fit for me? So for the students that we work with that are getting to universities automatically, there's a tendency to take it a little lax and say, I'm going to put more effort into the ones that I'm not automatically admitted to. But here at CSLAP, we approach every single application as if you're not going to get in automatically. In some cases, that's true with getting in automatically to the university, but not into the major necessarily. The major is much more competitive, but also for schools in which you are for sure going to get in and there's no competitive process for the major, it's still good to put 100% in, putting that essay you're going to be proud of, making sure that you're eligible for all the merit scholarships. And that way, you know, you're putting your best foot forward in every single application. So my recommendation for students watching this is don't think that there's two tiers, one in which you have the automatically admission universities and then the ones with holistic review. Treat all of them as if they're holistic review. And I think you'll see a big payoff in the end.
Great advice. Great advice. Aimee, do you want to add anything?
You know, what that actually just sparked is something a little different. Because Thomas mentioned, you know, he was sitting in a presentation, the top 10% were asked to attend. The recruiter probably had he had a target. He needed to talk to his top 10% in that school, and that's totally fine. But sometimes that's not the case. So if you attend a large high school where you're not hearing about college visits, or it's not being spread out there, you kind of find out about it last minute, because maybe one of your friends who is ranked tells you it just happened, right? So what I encourage students to do who I know outside of my own campus is go visit whatever it's called. They're called different things at different schools. Your school might call it a Go Center, a College and Career Center. Mine is called a College Center. Whatever it's called, find out what that is. Ask your teachers, the staff will know, right? If you don't know who to talk to, ask a teacher. Where do I go to ask questions about college? You know, or an application, and go, and you're going to start advocating for yourself. If you're not ranked, that's okay. There is a college for all of us. There are fits for everybody. So you go and you find that person and you build a relationship and you stay in communication. You email that counselor, if it's a counselor, if it's a facilitator, whoever mans that lab or that classroom, you're asking all the questions. And it's okay to ask those questions, and they will guide you and they will show you the resources and the websites and where the platforms, like what we've been talking about, Apply Texas, Common App, they will show you those things and guide you. So if you are not ranked, please advocate for yourself. Ask the questions, find the people, and build connections. That's the best advice that I can give there. I was not a ranked student, first gen. Not top 10%, fell out of that pocket, and I didn't know what I was doing. Like, I really did not know what I was doing. I was very fortunate that I still obviously managed to go to college. But I don't have, it's not like a fairy tale, like I went to a top tier school. I went to college, and I'm very proud of that. And I got it, you know, I earned my degree. But I didn't have the opportunities my friends did. You know, I hung out with really smart people, but I was not, you know, academically like strong as like they were. So I just kind of went about it on my own and figured something out, right? And I ended up at college. But it only happened because I had that drive and I wanted to go, right? So I just did what I could. But we have so many resources now, right? So like we went to high school when there was no internet. So we didn't have internet resources, right? So all we could do were ask people. But you have the internet, and you have, you know, a lab probably in your Go Center, College Center, whatever it's called, has computers in it, more than likely. And so you can sit there and tell somebody, show me, like, what websites do I get on, right? Show me where to go, and advocate for yourself. Especially if you're first gen and your family's looking to you to open those doors for them. You know, there's a lot of weight to carry there, but you don't have to do it by yourself. So that just kind of sparked that story for me. And I share that with my students. I'm very honest and vulnerable. And they know, like, their college center counselor didn't go to a top school, like a named school, but she knows the process, right? So just ask the questions. Doesn't matter, what their background is. They have a degree, they love the work, they're there to help you. Ask the questions.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for mentioning that.
Mhm.
One, very brave of you to kind of date yourself like that, but two, but two, no, I think one, I think students, um, we have some perspective in the sense that it was a little tougher, right? I didn't have internet. We didn't have internet at my high school. So it was one computer with internet. And so it was always challenging, right? But also, I think more importantly, I think your story is really important because a lot of students don't get a lot of that extra attention, right? They're not having those conversations with recruiters. And, a lot of our high schools are really big high schools. You're
Mhm.
talking hundreds of kids. So there are a lot of kids who maybe aren't getting the attention that they need or the support. And so I appreciate you reminding students, like, do your research, go to these spaces that do exist now, right? Whether it's the Go Center, whatever it is that exists at your school, and using these resources, right? And so thank you for sharing that, Aimee. We've got about 20 minutes. Just a reminder for our group here, if you have any other questions, please drop them in the chat. What are some other maybe common topics or again, frequently asked questions that you all get from some of the parents or from some of the students that you all help?
I'd like to share information about near-peer mentorship. So part of what I mentioned at the very beginning is the necessity of having different kind of mentors. So I came from a single parent household, and I was the first in my family to go to college. I had very specific type of mentors at school. I had teachers who wanted me to succeed, but because I went to a big public school, I couldn't always get the one-on-one attention with either my teachers or my counselors. And I had a parent who supported me, but could not technically support me to and through college. So I needed a mentor who was once in my shoes. I didn't meet someone like that till I got to the college campus. And when I did, these were not students from South Texas. They were from all around the world. What I wish I would have had is a near peer mentor, someone from South Texas who can say, this is what it's like to move to the East Coast. This is what it's like to be a college student, the unvarnished version, not the version that a college admissions officer might sell you in order for you to apply to the school in the first place. And talking about honest things about what it's like to live on your own, what it's like to mingle with students your age, living on your own, what it's like to have a roommate, what it's like to budget for the first time in your life on your own. There are so many things that it's important to get this information from someone who's closer to you in age. And now I've lost that superpower. I've had it when we first started CSLAP, but what I do now is train our near peer mentors. So my main job now is to train our 20 to 25-year-olds who recently graduated from local high schools to go back to their high school and to fill in these gaps that they know exist. They understand what was going on at their high school when they were a student. They understand how to fill in that gap and to focus on those specific college readiness topics. All we do is give them the training and the information from the CSLAP side. So I like to think of myself as a trainer of trainers now, and if anything, a gateway. So students can come to CSLAP to get college access support, and we teach our classes and our college coaching sessions. But I always emphasize, I am not CSLAP. CSLAP is a community of people who have gone through our program and use us as a platform to give back to students just like you. So if anything, even if you're watching this online later, consider CSLAP a gateway. Reach out to us. Let us know. I'm interested in going to A&M College Station. I'm from McAllen ISD. Let me connect you for someone from McAllen who is now at A&M or who recently graduated. Let me connect you with someone who is somewhere along the line of applying to medical school or going through medical school. Please let us help you. That way you can make a mentor. And the big picture idea is that you start doing this early. I didn't get this till I got to college, and I didn't realize what makes Princeton is the people. So if you're just knee deep in your books and you're not looking up and meeting your professors, meeting your classmates sitting next to you, you're missing a large part of the experience. Mentorship is crucial for anything, getting into college, getting your career, being successful in life. So I recommend to everybody start developing those people skills now, learning how to be a good mentee, and in the near future, becoming that next mentor for the next generation.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Thomas. And when I post the video, right, because I'll post it afterwards, that way folks that weren't able to join us can always access it. I'll make sure to put in CSLAP's information there so that they can contact you guys, because yeah, you guys are doing great work. We have a question. They're asking, how do I go about exploring with my daughter what major to choose? Her early college degree will be interdisciplinary, but she still struggles about what to choose. Oh, so I'll go ahead and take a first stab at this. Is what this, I just came from a class that, so I help students. A lot of the students that I work with are undeclared first year students at the university. Um, and this is very common. We do get a lot of students that come in with degrees with their associates from early college campuses, and then are looking at, okay, what now, or want to stray and do something else. So one, I would say this is a common experience. In fact, most first year students will change their major. I want to say, about 60% of the time. So one, it's to be expected. Two, I think a lot of the advice I offer my students is, one, with your daughter, she doesn't have the opportunity that a lot of students will use their first couple of years to take their, not, their basics, right? But those couple of years become critical because those are opportunities to explore. Transitioning to university, she's going to have to identify a major fairly quickly and identify those courses just because of changes to financial aid. And so I would encourage, get involved on campus, talk to folks. I love Thomas's, I think the near peer mentor, in addition to understanding, right, what it's like living on campus, these are students that are in college. They can also speak to how did they go about identifying a major? Because I think that's important, right? What did they use? What resources did they use? Did they talk to professors? Uh, did they take, assessments? There are all kinds of assessments that'll help with that. Um, I, and this is me, I take a much more kind of philosophical approach with my students. So I'll often ask my students about, who they want to be in the life they want to create for themselves, and remind students that often they can go in a number of different ways in order to create that life for themselves, right? For our parents often approach it from a much more practical, can my son or daughter, can my child support themselves, and will they get employed at the end of college? And so there are a lot of things that they've got to sort of juggle and think about as they're deciding, making a decision about a major. Ultimately, the student, whatever major they choose, it's the student that's got to show up to class and hopefully enjoy the classes that they're taking, because the day-to-day grind is challenging, and getting yourself up to pursue one of these majors is not easy. So I think support them, encourage them to explore, encourage them to have conversations with other college students, so taking advantage of the near peer mentors or other resources, um, can help with that decision. Yeah, Thomas and Amy, you want to jump in, add anything?
Yes, I see your question from two angles. One is the big picture, long term, and short term. So in the long term, I'm reminded of a workshop we host at CSLAP called the Life Path Workshop, where we ask students to quickly go through a list of careers and job titles and circle the ones that seem interesting to them. Whenever I do that workshop with our students, I myself always circle teacher and ship captain, and I use those two as the examples. So I ask students, why is it that I chose these two topics, these two careers? They're very different on the surface, but there's a reason I chose both of them. So first, let me analyze the overlap. What are some of the qualities, traits, and skills that both of these entities have? One of them, for example, is public speaking. You're going to have to work with a team. In many cases, you're leading a ship, you're leading your crew. Many classes, you're leading your classroom of students. And of course, very different circumstances. One simple one is you're outside, you're inside. One is more physical, one is more academic. Those are the differences. And then we start to analyze which differences matter the most to me when I'm narrowing down what I want to do in the future, and how can I choose a career path that aligns with my life path, which is all the different similarities between all the different careers I just circled. So that is something I would recommend doing if you're still wide open as to what you want to do in the future. In the short term, what we do at CSLAP as well is look at the course offerings. So I love working with science students who want to go to medical school because they have so many pathways in front of them. So what we do is look at biology. What does biology look like at TAMU versus UT? What does chemistry look like if they're chem students? Sometimes they say, I like both. So we look at schools that have biochemistry. So all these different pathways to the same end goal, which is medical school. From there, we see what classes spark their interests, what professors could they get mentored by potentially. In that process, they learn a lot more about themselves and their academic interests, and they learn a lot more about the field. I knew I wanted to major in English, but I had no idea what the English field looked like. Thankfully, I jumped into a university with a strong American literature focus. I just so happened to like American literature, but at age 18, there's no way I would have been able to articulate that. So coming into your own in your potential major, I would recommend getting started by looking at what does this potential university have to offer. The third element to what you're saying is you have a associate's degree in interdisciplinary studies at a practical level, seeing where that transfers. And once it transfers, what does that potentially lead to? And what is the benefit of going to this four-year university if you already have 2 years under your belt? What could you then take advantage of as labeled as a junior? And there can be some potential benefits to that. You might end up taking those higher level courses that throw you right into that major that you want to get into, so you don't have to go through the prerequisites. On the other side, if it's the prerequisites that open up the gateway to that major in the first place, you might want to look into those topics individually to see, is this really what I want to jump into? So long-term, short-term, if you have more questions on that in the near future, please reach out to us. We'd love to work with you.
Yep,
Awesome.
I totally agree. Use your resources. Dr. Saldivar and I, now we have the internet, right? So get online, look at those degree plans. What is, what gets you excited when you look at courses? Which university houses the courses that really get you excited about being there, and being a part of that program. And also exploring what career paths, are open to you with those degrees. I was also an English major, but I actually was one of those people who shifted my focus a little. I started off as an English major within the education department. And even though, yes, I went into education, once I took education courses, I decided I didn't want it to be education focused necessarily. So I went straight English and got, Bachelor of Arts in English. And then, still pursued working in the field of education and in high schools. But I just knew that the coursework I wanted to spend my time on personally were more focused on the English major itself. And that's a decision I got to make once I actually stepped foot on campus and was in the classes. So that could very well happen with your daughter, where once she steps foot in there and starts to live the life in that program, she'll start to make some more concrete decisions about what she wants to do. So like Dr. Saldivar mentioned, this happens a lot. A lot of students do this. It's not uncommon that they're switching majors, changing their mind. It's not uncommon. And it's, as parents, it makes us a little nervous. Right. I have a daughter in college who's already shifted her focus a little bit within same department, but still shifted just the way her mama did. And you're a little nervous, but at the end of the day, it's their degree and it's their path and it's that life. It's like a step in their life that they're building here. So it's part of us as parents giving them advice and releasing and allowing them to make the decisions, so that they feel empowered when they do make those concrete choices.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you to both of you. Okay, we've got a few minutes left. Any final thoughts from either one of you?
So this is more, I would say, and I'm assuming Thomas might agree, maybe he won't, not out loud, but we get nervous with deadlines when we're working here with students, right? We understand your school load. We're not blind to the fact that you are high school students, and you are juggling homework for different courses. You're prepping for exams. Some of you are taking AP coursework. Some of you are in specific programs like IB. And so you are managing a lot. And some of you work as well. More, much respect to you if that's also what you're doing. So staying on top of your deadlines is going to be huge. I ask my students to keep it somewhere. If they're not paper people, might like to see that there's a calendar on their phone that has deadlines already noted on there with alarms set and whatever needs to happen. But keeping ahead of deadlines is my, one of my number one pieces of advice when I talk to students is, when's the deadline? Now let's count back about 2 weeks. Can you manage that? Like, could you manage that? Like, look at your time. Let's go back. Like, we go backwards and plan backwards. And if it's doable, we do it. We get it done a little early, and then we don't have the stress of, submitting at 11:59 p.m. Maybe technology isn't working, and been there, right? Sweating bullets when like nothing's happening, miss, nothing's happening, and it's just spinning like this. Been there. We want to avoid those situations, those really, really high stress situations. So if you could stay ahead of deadlines, and if you can manage that, that would be like a best practice for yourself during application season.
Great advice. Great advice. Thomas?
Yes, and for those of you who are here in the Zoom room, you already taking that important step. You're taking the initiative to learn more. The harsh reality of the college admissions process is that it's a very tight time schedule. I went to high school with 550 seniors. There was one college admissions counselor. It was very difficult starting in late August to get all those students reached out to, all the information at the right time, sitting down with them one-on-one, answering their questions, much less enhancing their opportunities and applications. It's very difficult what your teachers and counselors are going through. And in many cases, it's not like they can just magically reach you. There's logistical barriers. Sometimes teachers have no clue where the students are at. In some cases, at certain districts, you're getting bused to different campuses. And so sometimes students don't get information, or it's hard to even find where they're at to get them the information. So for those of you in this room, I would suggest being that ambassador, starting to be that mentor early on. If you have a friend or a group of friends at your school, whether they're juniors or seniors, start to talk to them about the information you have. You're a walking, talking institution with you reaching out to us, getting the information from CSLAP, from your college counselor. Spread the word. Be that person that people can turn to and say, can you take a look at my activities list? Can you read my essay? If you have a chance to go see your counselor, can you ask this question too? It really does come down to that, especially when it comes down to the wire on big deadline dates like November 1st, December 1st, December 31st. So you don't want to be asking this at the 11th hour. Thankfully, it's early September. There's still a little bit of slack. This is the time to start reaching out, asking those questions. And we'll always be here to help as an organization that works from the outside in. So CSLAP official, CSLAPofficial.com. You can reach out to us with basic questions. Our resources tab has a lot of different pages that shows information in a way that students have requested information's presented to them. So if you're a more visual person, we have more visual graphs for you. We have very detailed application guides as well. And you can always reach out to me directly or one of our near-peer mentors. Consider us an extra asset in addition to what you have at your local high school. And thank you, Jose, and thank you, Aimee, for participating. I didn't mention earlier that Jose and Aimee were both panelists and participants at our recent Empowerment Summit, which is one of the first things CSLAP did to give the community a place to stand to reach our parents and students. So thank you, Jose, for paying it forward and for giving CSLAP a platform to reach our parents and students in the Zoom room.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you to both of you for the work that you're doing, your commitment, right, to the community and to the students you serve. I think that really speaks to you all, who you all are. And so thank you. Thank you to our guests, those of you joining us. Like I said, we'll go ahead. We have been recording this. We'll go ahead and upload it and share it with folks. I ask that once this goes up, and particularly with our parents and students that are on the Zoom chat, we'll share that link, and I encourage you to please share it, just as Thomas said, maybe you become that, that leader, that person that shares it with your peers, right? So please, share this recording, share this information with others. And thank you again. Thank you to our panelists. You all have a wonderful, wonderful night. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.